She lived in a small town where life moved slowly and quietly. The streets were lined with old trees and the kind of houses that had seen generations grow up within their walls. From the outside, everything seemed ordinary, but inside her home, there was a world filled with music. Ever since she was a little girl, the sound of piano keys had been her companion. She had spent countless hours at the old upright piano in the corner of her living room, pressing each key with curiosity and care. The piano was scratched and worn from years of use, but she loved it deeply. Every note told a story, and every chord was a chance to feel something new. Her family was supportive in their own quiet way, but they were practical people. They understood that life required work and responsibility, and they never quite knew how to explain the way she felt when her fingers touched the keys. Music for her was not just a hobby. It was a language that allowed her to express what words could not. She would practice for hours, sometimes forgetting to eat, her mind fully absorbed in the patterns and rhythms she could create. It was her escape, her joy, and her way of understanding the world. Despite her love for music, she remained unnoticed in her community. The local school music program was small and underfunded, and performances were limited to simple recitals for parents and neighbors. The people who attended often came for social reasons rather than a genuine appreciation for music. Still, she found satisfaction in the quiet moments, knowing that each practice brought her closer to mastery. She dreamed of a time when someone would truly hear her, not just the notes she played but the emotion behind them. Her friends were few but loyal. They knew her love for the piano, and they would often sit quietly in the corner as she played, not saying much but feeling the music in their own way. She didn't need applause from them. Their presence alone was enough to make her feel understood. She sometimes wondered if the world outside her small circle would ever appreciate the depth of her talent. It was a thought that both excited and frightened her. She longed for recognition, but she also feared the vulnerability that came with exposing her innermost feelings to strangers. One afternoon, a letter arrived that would change everything. It was from a local music society that occasionally held performances and competitions. They had seen her name on a small list of students and were inviting her to play at an upcoming concert. The letter was polite and encouraging, but it carried a quiet expectation. They wanted her to perform a simple piece, something safe and familiar that the audience could enjoy without surprise or complexity. She read the words carefully, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was her chance to step onto a bigger stage, yet the instructions felt limiting. She spent the next few days preparing, practicing the assigned piece with precision. She wanted to honor the request and show that she could meet expectations. Her fingers moved over the keys with grace, producing the melody exactly as written. She could feel the music in her bones, the rhythm settling into her body, and for a moment, she felt content. But a small part of her, the part that had always sought more, whispered that she could do something different. She could take this simple piece and breathe life into it, show the audience not just the notes but her heart. Her evenings became a balancing act between following the instructions and exploring her own creativity. She played the piece exactly as written, then experimented with slight variations, adding small flourishes and subtle changes in tempo. Each time, she felt the music responding to her emotions, carrying the story she had always wanted to tell. She imagined the audience listening, their eyes widening in surprise, their hearts moved by the passion behind her fingers. The thought filled her with a thrill she had never experienced before. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. The day of the concert arrived, and she felt a knot of nervous energy in her stomach. She dressed simply, wearing clothes that allowed her to move freely at the piano. As she walked into the hall, she was struck by the sight of the audience settling into their seats. Some faces were familiar, others strangers. She could sense the quiet chatter, the polite anticipation, and the gentle hum of expectation. The piano sat on the stage, its polished surface reflecting the lights above. She took a deep breath and approached it, her hands brushing the keys in a familiar, comforting gesture. Backstage, she could hear the other performers, their tunes flowing softly through the curtains. Some were seasoned musicians, confident and poised, while others were like her, young and eager to be seen. She felt a wave of nervousness, but also a quiet determination. This was her moment, her opportunity to share something true and unfiltered. She reminded herself that the music was hers, that every note was an expression of her soul, and that she had the power to make it speak to others. As her turn approached, she walked onto the stage, the lights warm against her face. The audience turned toward her, polite smiles and polite applause greeting her presence. She seated herself at the piano and placed her fingers on the keys. The first notes were delicate, simple, following the sheet music as requested. She could feel the audience settling into the familiar melody, their attention drifting lazily at first. But as she continued, she allowed herself a small variation here, a subtle change in tempo there. The music began to breathe, to move with her emotions rather than just the printed notes. Her heart raced, but her hands moved with confidence. Each chord she struck carried a piece of her story, a reflection of years spent in quiet practice, in solitude, and in longing. The audience began to notice the difference, the unexpected depth in what was supposed to be a simple tune. Their attention sharpened, their curiosity piqued. She could feel the energy in the room shifting, the gentle expectation transforming into something more vibrant. She was no longer just playing notes. She was communicating, reaching across the space to touch hearts she had never met. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the stage, the audience, and even herself. The piano became an extension of her body, a voice for emotions too deep for words. She played with intensity and subtlety, with power and delicacy, letting the story unfold naturally. Each variation, each improvisation, was a reflection of her journey, her struggles, and her dreams. The audience sat in stunned silence, sensing the transformation but unable to predict what would come next. They were witnessing something rare. A simple tune turned into a living, breathing masterpiece. By the time she reached the final note, a silence hung in the air, heavy with awe. Then, gradually the room erupted into applause. It started softly, then grew louder, filling the hall with appreciation and amazement. Faces glowed with admiration, eyes wide with surprise. She sat there for a moment, letting the sound wash over her, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. She had done more than follow instructions. She had shared a piece of her soul and made it resonate with others. Backstage, friends and family rushed to congratulate her. Their faces shone with pride, and their words were filled with genuine excitement. The organizers were equally amazed, their polite expectations replaced by admiration for her courage and talent. She realized in that moment that this experience had changed her forever. She had discovered the power of taking a risk, of trusting her instincts, and of allowing her true self to shine. The performance was not just a success. It was a revelation, a turning point in her life. From that day forward, she knew that the world would hear her music, not just as notes on a page, but as a reflection of who she truly was. After the excitement of being invited to perform at the concert, she spent the next few days preparing for her simple assignment. The Music Society had given her a clear instruction: play a basic, familiar piano piece. It was meant to be easy for her, something that the audience could listen to without surprise. At first, she followed the instructions carefully, practicing the piece exactly as it was written. Her fingers traced the keys with precision, each note clear and measured, each chord placed perfectly. It was an ordinary piece, but she played it with care, respecting the rules and expectations set before her. She knew that the audience expected something safe, something predictable. They wanted comfort, not risk. Yet deep down, she felt the music calling for more. Each time she played, she felt a subtle yearning, a quiet whisper that suggested she could do something beyond the ordinary. She began to experiment quietly, testing small changes in the melody, adjusting the tempo slightly, and adding gentle variations to the rhythm. At first, she was hesitant. What if it went wrong? What if the audience didn't like it? But the thought of simply following instructions without expressing herself felt wrong. The music inside her demanded more, a voice beyond the printed notes. Her evenings became a delicate balance between obedience and creativity. During the day, she practiced the piece exactly as requested, mastering each note, ensuring there were no mistakes. At night, when the house was quiet and the world seemed still, she let herself explore. She played with the dynamics, adding subtle crescendos and decrescendos, letting the melody rise and fall as her emotions guided her hands. Sometimes she would pause, listening carefully to the sound she had created, feeling the music respond to her touch. It was in those moments that she felt truly alive, connected to something greater than herself, a universal language that spoke without words. Her family noticed the intensity of her practice, but they didn't fully understand the changes. They knew she loved the piano, but the idea of taking risks and improvising on her own seemed unusual to them. They watched quietly, sometimes offering encouragement in their practical way, reminding her to rest or eat, but otherwise giving her the space she needed. Her small circle of friends noticed too. They could sense the excitement in her energy, the spark in her eyes when she played. They didn't ask many questions. They simply sat quietly, letting the music speak to them in ways words could not. Their silent support gave her courage, a reassurance that someone understood the journey she was on. As the concert approached, her nervousness grew. The thought of performing in front of a larger audience was intimidating. What if she failed? What if her experiments went unnoticed or, worse, were misunderstood? Yet, alongside the fear, there was an undeniable excitement. She felt a sense of possibility that she had never experienced before. This was more than a simple performance. It was a chance to show her true self, to reveal the depth of her talent and the emotion she had carried within her for so long. She spent hours imagining the performance in her mind. She pictured herself at the piano, the audience waiting quietly, the lights soft and warm. She envisioned starting with the simple tune, gentle and precise, meeting expectations perfectly. Then, gradually, she imagined letting the music transform, allowing her emotions to shape each note, each chord, each pause. She thought about the expressions on the listeners' faces, the way their attention would sharpen as the music took an unexpected turn. The idea filled her with both anticipation and anxiety. It was a path she had never walked before, but it felt necessary, like a calling she could not ignore. She also practiced dealing with mistakes. She knew that when taking risks, errors could happen. But she trained herself to remain calm, to continue the music without hesitation, to turn imperfections into opportunities for expression. This mindset was new to her. In the past, she had been perfection-focused, fearing any deviation from the score. Now, she embraced the idea that true music was more than accuracy. It was feeling, it was presence, it was honesty. She learned to trust her instincts, to listen to the music as it unfolded under her fingers, and to respond naturally rather than mechanically. Her preparation extended beyond technique. She studied the audience, imagining their reactions, considering what would capture their attention and touch their hearts. She thought about the rhythm of the hall, the way sound traveled in the space, and how each note could reach them with clarity. She visualized the journey she wanted to take them on, from familiarity to surprise, from comfort to awe. Each element was a piece of a larger puzzle, and she worked tirelessly to bring them all together, blending skill with emotion, control with freedom. On the evening before the concert, she played the piece late into the night. The house was silent, the only sound her fingers moving across the keys. She had memorized the music, yet she allowed herself to improvise, following the invisible thread of her feelings. At one point, she stopped, breathing deeply, and realized that she had created something entirely her own. It was still the same simple tune, but now it carried a new life, a depth that reflected her inner world. She felt a surge of confidence. Perhaps she thought she could truly amaze them. Perhaps they could see not just the notes, but her spirit. The next morning, she felt a mix of excitement and calm. She packed her sheet music carefully, knowing that she might not need it, but wanting it as a safety net. She dressed simply, choosing clothes that would allow her to move freely at the piano. Her fingers tingled with anticipation, the familiar sensation of readiness and nervous energy intertwined. She took one last look at her piano at home, a silent farewell to the safe space where she had grown, and set out for the hall. Arriving at the venue, she felt the atmosphere immediately. The hall was filled with soft murmurs, chairs being adjusted, the low hum of anticipation. Performers were warming up, some confident, some anxious, and she could feel their energy mixing with her own. She was still young, still relatively unknown, but the chance to share her music on this stage felt monumental. She reminded herself that the audience came to hear music, and she had something to offer beyond expectations. The simple tune was her starting point, but her true goal was to communicate, to connect, to let them feel what she had felt for so many years. Backstage, she found a quiet corner to warm up. She closed her eyes, feeling the keys under her fingers, recalling the hours of practice, the nights of quiet experimentation. She repeated the simple melody, then added the subtle variations she had been exploring. Each sound reminded her of her journey, of the persistence and passion that had brought her here. She felt a calm determination settle over her. The fear was still there, but it was now accompanied by purpose. She was ready to step beyond expectations and let the music speak for itself. Finally, the announcer called her name. She took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, her heart beating fast but steady. The lights were warm on her face, and the audience turned toward her. Polite applause greeted her presence, but she knew that the real moment had yet to come. She seated herself at the piano, adjusted her posture, and placed her hands on the keys. The room was silent, all attention focused on her. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, drawing strength from the quiet, then began to play. The first notes were exactly as instructed, simple and familiar, filling the room with a gentle melody. She felt the audience settling into the tune, listening politely, unaware of what was about to unfold. Her fingers moved smoothly, precise and confident. Then, gradually, she began to introduce subtle changes, tiny variations that made the music breathe. Each shift was intentional, a small step toward transforming the ordinary into something extraordinary. She watched the audience, sensing their curiosity awakening, their attention sharpening. The experiment had begun, and the simple assignment was becoming her canvas, ready to be painted with the full colors of her heart. As she continued to play the simple tune, a quiet confidence began to grow within her. The familiar notes had a gentle rhythm, and she allowed herself to follow their flow, letting her fingers move naturally across the keys. Slowly, she began to add subtle changes, tiny embellishments that lifted the music beyond its basic form. A slight pause here, a gentle crescendo there, and the melody started to breathe in a way it never had before. She could feel it responding to her emotions, reflecting her thoughts and feelings with each stroke of her fingers. The audience, initially relaxed and expectant of a simple performance, began to notice the subtle differences. Their heads tilted slightly, their expressions shifting from polite attention to curiosity. Something was changing in the music, something alive that made them lean forward. She felt a thrill as she realized that they were listening more closely, feeling the emotion she poured into each note. The power of the piano was no longer confined to the paper. It had become a conversation, a bridge between her soul and theirs. Encouraged, she continued, allowing herself to venture further. The melody, once ordinary, began to evolve, growing in intensity and depth. She introduced small, daring variations that were both unexpected and beautiful. Her fingers flew over the keys with a mixture of precision and freedom, creating layers of sound that resonated throughout the hall. Each note carried a piece of her story, her years of practice, her quiet perseverance, her secret longing to be heard. The music was no longer just a tune. It was a living expression of who she was. She felt the room shift around her. The subtle rustle of the audience, the clearing of throats, even the soft tapping of feet, all faded as she lost herself in the music. Her heart beat in rhythm with the melody, her body swaying gently as if it were part of the piano itself. She had entered a state where nothing else mattered. No fear, no expectation, no judgment. Only the music existed, only the story she was telling through her fingers. She had found a freedom she had never known, a way to communicate that transcended words. As the improvisation grew more intense, the audience's reaction became more visible. Eyes widened in surprise, mouths opened slightly in awe, and hands began to move in quiet, involuntary gestures. Some leaned forward, as if trying to catch every note, every subtle shift in the rhythm. She could feel their energy, their engagement feeding back into her performance. The hall was no longer a silent room of spectators. It had become a living entity, reacting and responding to the music, a shared experience of discovery and emotion. Her thoughts drifted back to the countless hours she had spent practicing alone, imagining moments like this, hoping that one day she could reach people in a way that transcended simple performance. Now it was happening. She could see the realization on their faces. What they had expected to be a polite recital was becoming something extraordinary. The simple tune had transformed into a fiery, emotional masterpiece, and she was guiding them through it, note by note, heart by heart. The variations grew bolder. She allowed herself to play with tempo, speeding up in certain passages, then slowing down to emphasize a particularly emotional chord. She added flourishes that had been born from years of quiet experimentation, each one feeling right and necessary. The music danced and swelled, carrying with it the energy of her imagination, the intensity of her feelings, and the culmination of all her dedication. It was a performance that could not have existed without the journey she had taken to reach this moment. She noticed small reactions from the audience that made her smile inwardly. A child sat completely still, eyes wide, clearly captivated by the music. An older person leaned forward in their seat, hand over their heart, as if the piano had reached deep into their soul. Even the organizers, who had expected a modest performance, were now leaning forward, expressions of astonishment on their faces. She felt the shared connection, the invisible thread that linked her to each person in the room. Music had become more than sound. It had become understanding, empathy, and a celebration of emotion. As the middle section of her improvisation approached, she allowed herself to take more risks. The notes became faster, more intricate, and more passionate. She incorporated dynamics that added drama and intensity, making the audience sit forward in anticipation with each rising chord. The hall seemed to vibrate with the resonance of her music, every note echoing with clarity and depth. She felt alive, more alive than ever before, as if the music had unlocked a part of her that had been hidden away, a place of pure expression and joy. Her mind and body moved in perfect synchrony. Every movement was instinctive, guided by feeling rather than thought. She was aware of the audience, yet not distracted by them. She was aware of the piano, yet not confined by it. The boundaries between performer and music, between audience and performer, began to blur. She had become part of the music, and the music had become part of her. Each note was a brushstroke on an invisible canvas, painting a story that words could never capture. The intensity of her performance reached a peak, and she felt a sense of triumph. She had taken the ordinary and made it extraordinary. She had followed the simple instructions only to transform them into something deeply personal and expressive. The audience felt it too, their faces reflecting awe, admiration, and wonder. The music had touched them in a way that was unexpected, moving beyond entertainment into the realm of shared human experience. As she began to guide the piece toward its conclusion, she allowed a few lingering notes to echo, creating a sense of resolution and completeness. The music softened, drawing the audience gently out of the emotional journey she had led them on. She watched their faces carefully, noting the subtle smiles, the thoughtful expressions, and the deep breathing that betrayed their emotional engagement. She had succeeded in connecting with them in a profound and unforgettable way. Finally, she let the last note linger, holding it just long enough for it to fade naturally. Silence filled the hall for a brief, suspended moment, as if everyone were absorbing what had just happened. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. It started quietly, then grew louder, until the entire hall was clapping, cheering, and some even rising to their feet. The sound was overwhelming, yet beautiful, a testament to the impact of what she had just shared. She remained seated at the piano for a moment, allowing the applause to wash over her, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. She realized in that instant that this was more than a successful performance. It was a moment of revelation, a confirmation that her dedication, her courage, and her willingness to take risks had paid off. The audience had not only heard the notes but had felt the emotions behind them. She had transformed a simple tune into a masterpiece that was alive, passionate, and unforgettable. In the quiet that followed the applause, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had shared a part of herself that could never be taken back, a moment that would linger in her memory and in the hearts of those who had listened as the final note faded. The hall seemed to hang in a moment of suspended silence. The audience was still, caught between disbelief and admiration, trying to grasp what had just occurred. For a brief instant, the room was suspended outside time, and she felt a strange calm, a quiet satisfaction in knowing she had given everything she had. Slowly, the silence broke, and the first rounds of applause began. At first, it was tentative, polite, the kind of clapping given to a young performer as a gesture of encouragement. But as the audience realized the depth and originality of what they had witnessed, the applause grew louder, stronger, and more enthusiastic. People were rising to their feet, some clapping with urgent joy, others whispering in awe, their faces reflecting the amazement that she could feel herself. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a moment, still tingling from the intensity of the performance. She had felt every note, every pause, every subtle nuance of the music as if it were part of her own body. Now, in the energy of the audience's response, she felt a rush of emotions, relief, pride, and a kind of elation she had never experienced before. She had not just played the notes. She had shared her soul, and the people had received it. Their applause was not just recognition. It was a connection, a shared acknowledgement of something rare and beautiful. The reaction was immediate and heartfelt. Whispers of admiration spread through the hall. Some audience members were wide-eyed, nodding subtly as if confirming to themselves that what they had heard was real. Others were smiling, a warmth in their eyes, touched by the intensity and honesty of the performance. People turned to their neighbors, murmuring words of wonder, sharing the shock and delight that the music had inspired. It was a ripple of emotion, spreading from one person to the next, a collective experience of awe and appreciation. She could sense the shift in energy, the transformation from polite curiosity to genuine respect and admiration. Backstage, her friends and family were already moving toward her, faces bright with excitement. Their eyes shone with pride and disbelief, and their voices trembled with emotion as they congratulated her. They had seen her dedication, her late nights of practice, and her quiet moments of struggle, and now all of that effort had been recognized. They enveloped her in hugs, laughter, and tears, each gesture a testament to their love and belief in her. She felt a deep warmth in her heart, the knowledge that her closest supporters shared in her triumph. Even the organizers and judges, who had expected a safe and modest performance, were visibly impressed. Their expressions were a mixture of astonishment and delight, and they approached her with words of praise and admiration. They commented on her skill, her creativity, and the courage it took to transform a simple assignment into a unique masterpiece. They recognized the rare combination of technical ability and emotional depth, and it was clear that they had not anticipated the impact she would make. Their acknowledgement added a layer of validation to the experience, reinforcing her belief in her talent and potential. As the audience continued to applaud, she allowed herself to take a moment to reflect. She thought about the countless hours spent practicing alone, the moments of doubt, and the quiet determination that had brought her here. Every late night, every missed meal, every challenge she had overcome had led to this moment. She realized that the performance was more than just an event. It was a culmination of her journey, a testament to her dedication, courage, and passion. In that instant, she understood that the risk she had taken in allowing herself to deviate from the simple assignment had been worth every second. After the initial applause, the audience began to settle, still buzzing with excitement. People were talking quietly among themselves, sharing their impressions and marveling at her ability to bring such emotion and complexity to a piece they had expected to be ordinary. The music had left a lasting impression, a memory that would linger long after the notes had faded. She could see the impact on their faces, the way their expressions carried a mixture of wonder, respect, and inspiration. It was a powerful reminder of why she had chosen this path, why she had dedicated herself to music despite the challenges and uncertainties. As she stepped away from the piano, she noticed a few audience members approaching her, eager to express their admiration personally. They spoke of how the music had moved them, how it had made them feel emotions they could not put into words. Some were seasoned musicians themselves, impressed by her technical skill and her creativity. Others were simply lovers of music, touched by the sincerity and passion in her performance. Each word, each gesture of appreciation, reinforced the connection she had made through her music. She realized that the power of her art lay not only in the sound itself, but in the ability to touch hearts, to create shared experiences, and to inspire others. The sense of accomplishment was accompanied by a new awareness of possibility. She had stepped beyond the limitations set by others and discovered a path uniquely her own. The applause and admiration of the audience were not just a reward. They were an invitation to continue exploring, creating, and sharing. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clear understanding that her music could have an impact far beyond the confines of her small town or the expectations of the local society. This was the beginning of something larger, a journey that would continue to unfold as she embraced her talent and passion fully. In the days following the concert, the response continued to resonate. People who had attended shared their experiences with friends and family, recounting the extraordinary performance and the unexpected brilliance of her interpretation. Some local newspapers and social media platforms began to take notice, sharing stories and videos of her performance. She began to receive invitations to play at other events, each opportunity a chance to expand her reach and touch more lives with her music. The recognition was new and exhilarating, yet she remained grounded, remembering the dedication and love for music that had brought her here. Her family and friends continued to support her, their encouragement and belief in her abilities unwavering. They celebrated not only the success but also the courage and creativity she had shown. They reminded her of the importance of staying true to herself, of continuing to explore and take risks in her musical journey. Their presence was a source of comfort and inspiration, a reminder that she was not alone in her pursuit, and that her achievements were shared joys that strengthened her resolve. She herself felt a transformation. The experience had given her confidence, a deep sense of self-assurance that she had rarely known before. She understood that her talent was not just a gift but a responsibility, a way to connect with others and make an impact through her art. The performance had taught her that following the safe path was not always the most rewarding, and that true expression often required courage, creativity, and trust in oneself. She carried this lesson forward, knowing that every future performance would be shaped by the courage she had discovered in that moment. As the days passed, she continued to practice, refining her technique and exploring new musical ideas. She experimented with compositions, improvisations, and interpretations, always seeking to push beyond the ordinary. Each practice session was infused with the memory of the concert, the applause, and the connection with the audience. She felt a sense of momentum building, a certainty that her music had a place in the world and that her voice deserved to be heard. The experience had ignited a fire within her, a drive to continue growing and sharing her passion with others. Looking back, she realized that the concert had been a turning point. It was more than just a successful performance. It was a revelation of her potential, a confirmation of her path, and a moment of transformation. The audience's reaction had been a mirror, reflecting the truth of her abilities and the depth of her artistry. She had moved people, not with showmanship or flash, but with honesty, dedication, and emotion. The experience had taught her that music was not just notes on a page, but a language of the heart, capable of bridging gaps, touching souls, and inspiring change. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever, guiding every note, every performance, and every choice she made in her journey as a musician. After the concert, her life began to shift in ways she had never imagined. The applause and admiration she had received were not fleeting. They had opened doors and sparked opportunities that had seemed impossible just days before. People began to recognize her in her small town, offering congratulations and words of encouragement whenever they saw her. Each interaction reinforced the impact of her performance and reminded her of the connection she had made with so many people through her music. It was both humbling and exhilarating, a mixture of feelings she had never experienced before. Invitations to perform began to arrive from places beyond her local community. Small events at first, then larger gatherings, and eventually requests from venues she had only dreamed of playing in. With each invitation, her confidence grew, but so did her sense of responsibility. She knew that her music had the power to move people, to inspire, and to touch hearts, and she felt a deep commitment to continue sharing it in the most honest and meaningful way possible. Each opportunity became a chance to not only demonstrate skill but to communicate emotion and connect with people on a deeper level. Her practice routine changed as well. The hours she once spent alone in quiet determination were now filled with more purposeful exploration. She experimented with new compositions, trying different styles and improvisations. She sought out mentors and teachers who could help her refine her technique and broaden her understanding of music. Each day brought growth, each practice session a step toward discovering more of her potential. She realized that the performance had not been an end but a beginning, a gateway to a life dedicated to expression, creativity, and emotional honesty. The memory of the concert stayed with her vividly. She could recall the exact sound of the final notes, the sensation of the keys under her fingers, and the energy of the audience responding to her music. These memories became a source of motivation and inspiration, reminding her why she had chosen this path and reinforcing the importance of taking risks and trusting her instincts. She knew that the courage she had shown in that moment would continue to guide her in every future performance, shaping not only her music but her approach to life itself. People began to notice her unique voice and interpretation of music. Critics and enthusiasts alike praised the way she could transform a simple tune into something extraordinary. They spoke of her ability to blend technical precision with raw emotion, to make each performance feel both personal and universal. Her music became a source of inspiration for others, particularly young musicians who saw in her a model of dedication, creativity, and courage. She was no longer just a local talent. She was becoming a recognized artist whose performances resonated far beyond the notes on the page. Along with recognition came challenges. The expectations of audiences and organizers increased, and she sometimes felt the pressure to perform perfectly. Yet, she remembered the lesson from her breakthrough performance, that true music comes from honesty, from emotion, and from the courage to take risks. She learned to balance technical perfection with creative expression, understanding that the impact of music lay not only in precision, but in the ability to convey feeling and connect with others. Each challenge became an opportunity to grow, each new audience a chance to explore the depth and breadth of her artistry. Her personal life also evolved. Friends and family continued to offer support, their pride and encouragement unwavering. They celebrated her achievements and reminded her to stay grounded, to continue valuing the joy of music itself rather than only the recognition it brought. Their presence provided a steady foundation, allowing her to navigate the new opportunities and challenges with a sense of balance and perspective. She realized that the journey was not just about performance but about the relationships, experiences, and connections that music enabled. As she performed in new venues, she began to notice subtle changes in how she approached music. She was more confident in her choices, more willing to experiment and express herself fully. The fear of judgment had diminished, replaced by a sense of trust in her own instincts. She understood that each performance was a dialogue with her audience, an exchange of energy and emotion that could not be scripted. This understanding transformed her playing, making it more vibrant, authentic, and engaging. She had discovered a way to connect deeply with listeners, turning each performance into a shared experience rather than a solitary act. Her growth extended beyond the stage. She began to compose original pieces, drawing inspiration from her experiences, her emotions, and the world around her. Each composition was a reflection of her inner life, a way to communicate thoughts and feelings that words could not capture. She shared these works in recitals and recordings, and they were met with admiration and enthusiasm. People recognized not only her technical ability but also her creativity, her originality, and her courage to express herself fully. Through her compositions, she was creating a lasting legacy, a body of work that would continue to inspire and move others long after the notes had been played. She also began to mentor young musicians, sharing her knowledge, experiences, and encouragement with those who were just beginning their journey. She understood the power of guidance and support, having benefited greatly from it herself, and she wanted to pass it on. Through teaching, she discovered new layers of her own understanding, learning to articulate the nuances of emotion, technique, and expression that had made her performances so impactful. Her students thrived under her mentorship, and she found joy and fulfillment in helping others discover their own voices through music. Over time, she realized that the concert that had seemed so ordinary at the start had been a turning point not just in her career but in her life. It had taught her the value of courage, the importance of trusting herself, and the transformative power of music. She understood that success was not just about recognition or applause, but about the ability to express truth, connect with others, and inspire change. This realization shaped her choices, guiding her toward opportunities that allowed her to grow, create, and make a difference through her art. Her journey continued with new performances, recordings, and compositions, each one building on the lessons of that first breakthrough. She traveled to new places, met new people, and shared her music with audiences who were eager to experience her unique voice. Through it all, she remained grounded in her love for the piano, her dedication to practice, and her commitment to authenticity. The joy of music, the thrill of expression, and the connection with listeners remained her guiding principles. Looking back, she understood the significance of that simple instruction to play a basic tune. It had been an invitation, a test, and a challenge all at once. By choosing to embrace it fully, yet daring to go beyond it, she had discovered her potential, her voice, and her path. She had learned that true artistry comes not from avoiding risk but from trusting oneself, from pouring emotion into every note, and from creating experiences that resonate with others. That single performance had set the stage for a lifetime of growth, inspiration, and shared beauty through music. Her story became an inspiration for others, proof that courage, dedication, and authenticity could transform not only a single moment but an entire life. She continued to perform, to teach, and to compose, always guided by the lessons she had learned and the connections she had made. Each note she played carried the memory of that first daring improvisation, the applause that affirmed her path, and the realization that music could touch hearts in ways that words never could. Through her journey, she showed that one simple moment, embraced with courage and passion, could open the door to a lifetime of extraordinary possibilities.